December 1st, 1948. On Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, a man was found slumped against a seawall. He was well-dressed, well-groomed, and appeared calm, but he was dead. He carried no identification. Every label had been carefully cut from his clothing, and no one knew who he was. Australian police launched an investigation. The man's fingerprints were compared against databases worldwide. No match was found. The autopsy report could not conclusively determine the cause of death. There were signs of poisoning, but which poison could not be identified. There were no signs of struggle. The man appeared to have died, as if simply falling asleep. Months later, inside a hidden fob pocket in the man's trousers, a tiny rolled-up piece of paper was found. On it were just two words, Tamam Shud. In Persian, this means finished, or it is ended. The words had been torn from the final page of a poetry book by the 12th century Iranian poet Omar Khayyam, the Rubaiyat. But where was the book itself? The book was soon found in the glove compartment of a car. On its back cover was a handwritten cipher, an unbreakable code. 5 lines of letters, written in bold dark ink. Renowned cryptographers, British intelligence, and American code-breaking experts examined this code repeatedly. The most skilled code breakers of the Cold War era worked on it. No one could crack it. Inside the book, a woman's telephone number was also written. That number belonged to a young nurse living in Adelaide. She was questioned. She said she did not know the man. But over the years, investigators found strong evidence suggesting this statement was not true. The woman passed away in 2007. She took the secret with her. In 2022, a research team conducted DNA testing using hairs taken from the man's death mask. The results pointed to a man named Carl Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne. However, this identity was never officially confirmed by South Australia Police. The cipher remains unsolved. The cause of death remains unknown. Was the Somerton man a spy? 1948 was the height of the Cold War. The coded note, the effort to conceal his identity, the undetectable poison, all pointed to an intelligence operation. But this, too, was never proven. The mystery of the Somerton man has never fully been closed. (1915) World War I was raging across Europe, hospitals overflowing with the wounded. Amid this chaos, doctors began noticing something deeply strange. Healthy people were suddenly freezing in place. Their eyes remained open, but they could not speak, could not move. It was as if their brains had fallen asleep, while their consciousness remained awake. Austrian neurologist Konstantin von Economo first described the disease in 1917 and gave it a name, Encephalitis lethargica. Its symptoms were extraordinarily varied. Some patients slept for days, were woken, and immediately fell back asleep. Others could not sleep at all, remaining awake for days on end. And some became completely motionless, frozen like statues, confined to their beds for years. One of the most terrifying features of the disease was that patients felt trapped inside themselves. These people, who appeared motionless and unresponsive from the outside, were in fact fully aware of everything around them. They could hear, they could see, but they could not respond. Neurologist Oliver Sacks studied these patients decades later and published his book, Awakenings, in 1903.
From 1917 to 1930, more than 1 million people worldwide were affected by the disease. Over 50% of cases resulted in death. The cause of the disease was never definitively identified. After 1930, it virtually disappeared. But isolated cases are still seen today. Why it appeared and why it vanished remain unanswered questions.
Research continues. May 26, 1828. On the streets of Nuremberg, Germany, a teenager of approximately 16 appeared. He wore tattered clothing, his boots worn through to nothing. His gait was strange, as if he had never walked before. He clutched 2 letters tightly in his hands. To everyone who approached him, he repeated the same sentence. "I want to become a cavalry soldier, like my father." He could say nothing else. He did not even know his own name. As Kaspar was questioned, he slowly began to tell his story. He had grown up in a small cell, in darkness, completely alone. He had never seen the sun. He had always eaten bread and water. When he woke each morning, bread and water were beside him, but he had never seen who left them. Kaspar's eyes were extremely sensitive to light. Loud sounds disturbed him deeply, but his capacity for learning was extraordinary. Kaspar Hauser quickly became the greatest mystery in Europe. Many claimed he was the hereditary prince of the Grand Duchy of Baden. According to the theory, Kaspar had been declared dead at birth, a substitute baby placed in his stead, and the true heir locked away in a small cell. But no document to prove this was ever found. In 1829, the first attack on Kaspar Hauser took place. A masked man wounded him. Kaspar survived, but was never able to identify his attacker. Then, in December of 1833, he was stabbed by a stranger in a park in Ansbach. He returned home and described what had happened. 3 days later, he died. His final words were, "I don't know, I don't know." On Kaspar Hauser's gravestone, these words were inscribed, "Here lies Kaspar Hauser, riddle of his time. His birth was unknown, his death mysterious. DNA tests were conducted, hundreds of books written, films made. His true identity remains disputed. Who killed him and why remains unknown." 3 different countries, 3 different centuries, 3 different mysteries. The silent death on Somerton Beach, the mysterious illness that froze the world, and the young man who arrived, knowing nothing, and left having learned nothing. What all 3 share is one thing: history gives no answer. The darkest pages of history sometimes never open. Some questions keep being asked, some files never close. The Somerton man died not knowing who he was, encephalitis. Lethargica disappeared without explaining its cause. Kaspar Hauser left without knowing where he came from. And these 3 mysteries will live on in the memory of humanity forever.